Okay, there we go. So welcome. This is Growth Mindset Part 1. My name is Jennifer Hitchcock. I'm a professor of English, and this year I'm also the CETL Faculty Fellow for High Impact Practices. If you want, we have two different QR codes here. One is for resources and these slides. In fact, I have a whole folder set up with growth mindset resources, research, as well as slides where you can find all the slides for this series of, I'm going to have two different growth mindset workshops here. There's also a CETL sign-in form, and let's see here. I can go ahead and put those in the chat later on as well. So, well, probably there's a chance you have already heard a little bit about growth mindset. You may already be applying some growth mindset principles in your courses. But so this workshop is just going to kind of get you thinking more about it, more about your own mindset, your students' mindsets, and how you can kind of cultivate growth mindset in your courses. So we're going to do some things, including identifying principles of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, discovering the benefits of growth mindset for student learning. Folks are going to present and share ideas for promoting growth mindset in courses and various disciplines, and discover further resources related to growth mindset as well. So what is it? You've probably heard about it. It's been around for a few years now. The concept based originally on psychologist Carol Dweck's research that she first presented in her book Mindest, The New Psychology of Success. Research from Dweck and others since then shows that students' attitudes about their abilities and intelligence affect their learning and responses to academic challenges. And if you're interested to really dive into some of the educational research on this, I listed just a couple things, and then there's a link here in the slide that you can use to access further research on this topic. So to think for a second, what types of attitudes, and again, this because I know this is common for a lot of people know something about growth mindset. What are some of those types of attitudes that you know of that might be common for a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? And you're welcome to, if you want to unmute yourself or if you just want to pop some ideas into the Zoom chat, just think about it for a minute. What are some of those attitudes that people might have if they have a growth mindset or if they have a fixed mindset? And while you're thinking about that, again, you're welcome to put something in the chat. I like that. Yes, thank you. Growth, I can do it, just not yet. In fact, I do include a link to Carol Dweck's video from a TEDx talk, The Power of Yet. So good. And the fixed mindset, I can't do this, it's too hard. Yeah, very much so. And I talk to my writing students. I teach, first year composition, English 111, English 112, EDE courses, and writing, like math too. I'd say those are maybe the two most common subject areas where students feel like they're either good at it or they aren't. They either have a talent for writing or they can't write. So I hear a lot of those fixed mindset attitudes, and I try to overcome those or remind students otherwise. Let me just, okay, so this, and this kind of gets to what you were saying. Yeah, students who believe they can increase their abilities and intelligence through effort and through experience, well, they're more likely to respond to challenges with increased effort, to seek out feedback, to experiment with new strategies for learning. If they believe there's a chance that they can get there, that they can learn and master something, they're more likely to put forth the effort. Students with a growth mindset might set goals for mastering disciplinary content, and they might also seek out challenging tasks that will help them acquire and develop new skills. As if and I talk to my students sometimes about this, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you believe you can do it, you're going to try harder and you're going to be more likely to succeed. Whereas if you believe you can't, then you're not going to put forth the effort. So it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy. So the growth mindset, and one of the keys here, when we look at the idea of learning goals that students put on themselves, growth mindset, students are more likely to want to master the material. So they're going to be a little more focused on actually learning and getting better and getting good at something to master it, rather than just performance goals, which means they're just looking at the grade only and that's all they care about. So that's another thing. Focusing too much on the grade and not enough on the learning or the skills is another thing we see when someone does not have a growth mindset. Here's a little image. I actually got this from one of our former colleagues here in advising, but this is a growth mindset self-talk alphabet. I really like some of the ones on here. In fact, if you take a minute to look at it, maybe pop in one or two that you particularly appreciate in the Zoom chat, or you can unmute. But I'll read a couple of them. You can also spend more time if you want to look at the slides later. There's actually a Y at the bottom if you notice the yet. I don't know how to do this yet for the Y. N, new things or opportunities for me to learn. J, learning is a journey. L, learning is my goal, not perfection. Are there any here that you like in particular? And again, you're always welcome to put stuff in the chat too. So, and for folks watching the video, if you want to pause it and take some time to look over these, and you're always welcome to pull some of these out and throw them right into your assignments or slides. Yes, K, keep an open mind. That's a good one. So anyway, this is a graphic. You're welcome to use this. I even have the accessible, a document. You can click on there for the accessible version where it's typed out. So fixed mindset. So the fixed mindset is the kind of in contrast to the growth mindset. And for fixed mindset, and you said this, we mentioned this already, kind of this belief that you can't, this doubt in yourself, doubting that you can do it, thinking that ability is fixed. Students who think intelligence and ability are immutable or fixed respond to failures in certain ways, such as disengaging, withdrawing, or continuing the same methods even if they're not working. So even if your strategies for studying are ineffective, if you have a fixed mindset, you might just keep doing it because you're not making that connection between your effort and strategies and the outcome. Students with a fixed mindset are also likely to choose safe learning experiences and focus on performance goals. Remember, focusing too much on those grades to help them validate their intelligence and avoid exposing their failures and deficiencies. So fixed mindsets, tend to want to avoid challenges, right? Because you want to have something be pretty easy. If it's too hard, if you have a fixed mindset, you're more likely to get discouraged and be more likely to give up. And again, this comes back to it's like that self-fulfilling prophecy. Someone who believes they can improve and learn and get better is more likely to put effort and try and persist. Someone who believes they can't, because it's all tied to innate talent or ability, if something is hard or frustrating, they're much more likely to give up and not try. And of course, that's going to reinforce that. Because if you give up, you can't succeed. You can also tell stories, of course, there's lots of examples of famous people who became very successful, but if you look at their story, their life story usually involves multiple failures along that path to success. So it's good to remind folks about that too. This is another infographic that I like and sometimes show my students that shows some actual attitudes of both growth and fixed mindset. And what I also like to point out is it's not either one, it's not like people just have one or the other, right? Some people, and you can kind of, recognize sometimes yourself or people definitely are there some people that are more often have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. They're more likely to have negative self-talk versus someone else who's more likely to be more optimistic and positive and kind of have that growth mindset. But we all can have both in different areas. So I also say, it's sometimes it's mood-based, right? If you're having a really bad day, those fixed mindset attitudes are more likely to pop up. So this can also be, and I know we have a lot of students that struggle with mental health issues. So if you're having, a bad day, you're probably more likely to hear those fixed mindset voices in your head. Whereas if you're having a particularly good day, you might hear more growth mindset. But the idea, and I kind of stress this to my students, is to try to be aware of those voices. And I kind of describe it, as a Gen Xer, I think back to those old Disney cartoons with Donald Duck, and he had a little devil and a little angel, and one shoulder was the devil, one shoulder was the angel. So the fixed mindset is like that little devil telling you can't do this, you're not smart, you can't, no matter how hard you try, you're going to fail. Those kind of negative self-talk is that fixed mindset. But really you can see that the growth mindset really is about believing in the possibility that if you work hard, if you persevere, if you learn from your mistakes and your failures, that you can learn and improve and succeed. And it's all about effort and attitude. Whereas those fixed mindset voices, it's really just about inborn talent. I'm either good at something or I'm not. As if we're all born with genes to say, I'm going to be good at writing, or I'm going to be bad at math. I think gateway writing and math teachers might get this the most. So I try to tell my students, writing is not an inborn talent that you're born with. Just like being, good at playing sports or music. Yes, there might be a small percentage of people that have some kind of natural talent, but most people, for most things, it's about you work hard at it, you spend time doing it. People who get good at basketball are good at basketball largely because of the time they spend practicing and improving their playing. So it's like a sport. If you want to get good at writing, you got to put more time and effort and practice. And so you see why that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you believe in a fixed mindset, because if you find it frustrating and difficult, someone with a fixed mindset is going to give up. They're going to avoid doing it. And you're never going to get better at something if you're avoiding doing it and you want to try to, skip over that whole part of it. There's also that internalizing. When I fail, I'm no good. Versus growth mindset. When I fail, I learn. So the attitude of growth mindset is learning from your mistakes rather than seeing every mistake as a negative judgment. Okay? So anyway, I sometimes show students this, and again, you can click for an accessible image. But it helps to, just try to get students to be aware of those attitudes and those voices that they may encounter as part of their journey in college and in life, really. Okay, so I was going to have folks discuss this for a few minutes, and I'll give you a couple minutes to think about it. And folks in Zoom, you're welcome to put it in the chat. So just take a couple minutes thinking about that. Some studies have shown people can have a growth mindset in certain areas, but more fixed mindset in others. So think about yourself. As you know, it's also sometimes sharing your own struggles and trials with your students. Sharing bits of your own experiences can really help connect with students, get them to see that, they're not the only ones who go through this, and help build community too. So there's lots of benefits of sharing. So just think for a couple minutes about areas in life where you tend to have more of a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, or maybe examples from your life when you've experienced one or the other. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording here while we think about this. and then we can come back and share. Zoom. Okay, so okay, so some examples, and I'll also share an example for myself as well. A growth mindset, I can always improve my practices to help my students. And I really like that example because it shows too, us as educators, as teachers, we can always improve. Which actually leads me to one that I hadn't thought of, and that is that I had not always been as interested or paying as much attention to my student success data. When I started teaching years ago, honestly, when in the institutions I got started at teaching in higher ed, it wasn't something people talked about. You wanted the academic freedom, teach what you want, and you didn't want your dean or your administrators kind of breathing over your shoulder, you know, so that this was kind of something that people didn't pay attention to, honestly. And in recent years, as I've started to think more about data and think more about being a data-driven practitioner, I feel like that has really given me more of a growth mindset as an educator. Because first, you know, to know how you can improve, you have to kind of be able to reflect on where you are. And we will come back to this too, this metacognitive part of growth mindset, encouraging students to learn from their mistakes, to improve their strategies, involves that growing those metacognitive skills. So I like that. Being a practitioner, as a teacher, we can see that we can always improve. When I look back when I first started teaching over 20 years ago to now, I can definitely see some improvement, but you have to believe that that you can do it. And the fixed mindset, you said, I'm not a runner. That makes me think too of time when I didn't used to like exercise when I was younger. I used to run in high school, just not for the best reasons, not because I wanted to be healthy or be fit, you know. It was more about looks, and so my heart wasn't in it the same way. And I just thought, I'll never enjoy exercise. It's just such a chore, it's so unpleasant. And then I started, this was about 20 years ago, with my husband riding our bikes up hills. We lived in California, and the first time, and I'd never done a difficult bike ride before, and I started riding up this hill, and I had to stop, and I almost vomited. I was so in such pain, and I really wanted to give up and say, this is ridiculous, I'm never doing this again. But I kind of calmed down and, you know, tried a little more and realized, you know, when I got to the top of the hill eventually, even though I had to walk it quite a bit, well, riding down that hill was pretty nice. And I guess I started learning that no pain, no gain thing. I definitely don't exercise. I don't run anymore because I can't. I agree, that's more of a physical problem. I used to run. But that I definitely kind of developed what I used to have a fixed mindset about exercise too. I developed more of a growth mindset. Or another example I was going to say was like technology. I used to think, oh, I'm just not that good with technology. I don't understand it. When a computer doesn't do what I want, I get frustrated and be like, you know, maybe I'd go find my husband or an IT guy, but I didn't do that much to try to educate myself. You see, I just said, oh, I'm just not good at it. And then later, a few years later, I started, you know, teaching myself certain things. And I wouldn't say I'm a really big tech person, but I realized, you know what, I can go find YouTube videos on this. I can actually learn and improve this and not be so scared of technology and trying to say that it's evil or it's out to get me. So I think if you really think about it, everyone will notice that sometimes in their life, they have had attitudes that are both. And you might find in certain areas, like some people, again, it's common for people to think they're either not good at writing or they're not good at math or some, you know, or they're not good at science. They don't have a science brain or whatever it is you'll hear. And what is the subject area you teach? I didn't ask you that before. You can put it in the chat if you want. I know we have folks from all kinds of disciplines, so I know certain disciplines, you hear this more kind of attitudes of students believe that their discipline is just something they're not good at. So again, trying to kind of dispel some of these myths about things being based on innate talent or ability that doesn't change. But we all have this, and again, sharing stories with your students about your own life, your own experiences and struggles can help them connect too. Okay, yes. I'm sure dual enrollment instructors hear a lot of this. And it's great, if the younger we can start getting the students thinking in terms of a growth mindset, the better. So what are some ways to encourage a growth mindset? We bring this back to teaching, to how do we encourage our students to have a growth mindset? In addition to just talking about it, and I've started talking about this early in the semester, talking also about just the science of learning. This does connect with the science of learning. The science of learning supports a growth mindset. The concept of neuroplasticity, for example, supports the idea that yes, you can physically change your brain, change your neural pathways by doing the difficult work of learning. And it is difficult. Acknowledging that learning something new can be difficult, but giving students the confidence that they can do it if they try and if they learn from their mistakes. So emphasizing certain things, such as, of course, abilities and intelligence are not fixed. Okay, they're not inborn. They're changeable with time and effort, and there are many studies that support this. Yes, you can become smarter if you put time and effort into it. Learning isn't easy. It shouldn't be easy. Sometimes students, sometimes students find that when they're younger, certain things are easy and they expect it to always be easy. And as soon as it gets hard, they start to, freak out and get frustrated. So to really emphasize that it's not usually easy. Learning is difficult, and that struggling and making mistakes are a natural part of the learning process. That's how you learn. You learn by doing difficult, challenging things, failing and learning from those mistakes. That is the normal learning process. Also, that feedback is an important part of the learning process. As someone who teaches writing, that's definitely, we going through drafts. You have a draft, you get feedback, you revise it, and I give my students other opportunities for revision even after I give a tentative grade. But to just encourage students to be able to be better at accepting constructive criticism and feedback and using that as part of the learning process. Because I know sometimes I've had to really emphasize that some students, they just want to look at the grade and they don't even want to read the feedback. So emphasizing that as a really essential part of the learning process is also important. And of course, emphasizing to students that abilities and intelligence are not fixed, they're malleable. And doing this, emphasizing this, can also help promote equity, improve students' sense of belonging, and close achievement gaps, especially for students from underrepresented communities. And I have a link there to further research on that as well. That if you kind of normalize that learning can be a struggle, but that you can also give students confidence that if they go through these different steps, if they learn from the feedback, that they will be able to master the course content, and that you're there to support them in doing that. That you also went through your own struggles, that it's normal to struggle, that can make them also have less anxiety and less of a feeling of not fitting in. We have a lot of students, if they're from underserved communities or first-generation students, they tend to feel more out of place sometimes in college and feel overwhelmed early on. And, I kind of emphasize this too, that, even though other students might not be asking questions, you can't always assume that everyone understands except you. Sometimes students like to kind of think in their own heads that they're the only one that's struggling, therefore maybe they don't belong, maybe they're not cut out for this. So that's why emphasizing the difficulty of learning and the importance of learning from mistakes, that growth mindset stuff can help students feel like they belong. And so this is going to give even more help to those students that come from underrepresented communities. So what are some of the assignments and activities that can help encourage students to develop a growth mindset? I'm going to take another couple minutes here to think of some ideas and then talk about some ideas. So I'm going to pause the recording, and y'all watching, welcome to pause at any point. All right. Oops, there we go. Ooh, that's interesting. A video from Angela Duckworth on grit. That's a good one. I haven't seen that one in a while. But yeah, there's some good ones out there. And Carol Dweck even has done her own videos, like I said, linked in the resources at the end of these slides and in the folder resources, The Power of Yet. But that's a good one because grit, you often hear folks talking about grit and growth mindset together. The idea that if you have a growth mindset, you're more likely to have grit and persevere. So that's a good idea. And let's see, plans of action to review strategies and plan for improvement. That's a great, again, anything that emphasizes that, because that sounds like a good reflective metacognitive type assignment too, getting students to reflect on where they are, what they've learned, what they've struggled with, and think about how they could improve is a great way to do that. And then a lesson on growth mindset that has another video. So it sounds like you're already doing some great stuff that emphasizes this. And I know I've been doing some stuff, but I kind of looking at more research on it, seeing really the connection between students' mindset or attitudes and their that their desire to put forth effort to succeed, seeing that connection. I've really started to more recently emphasize this earlier in the semester. So really in week 1, probably, start talking about growth mindset, start talking about the science of learning, and especially, and I know if you teach SDV, that's a great course. This fits in really well with that. And I know some folks teaching, I teach English 111, for example, or English 111 ED 11. And so I get a lot of students that are brand new to college, it's their first semester. And so talking about this can really help them, not only in my class, to be more likely to put forth the effort to learn and improve their writing skills. But because that's one of the, that's usually something they take their first semester, just like hopefully SDV. I know they don't always do that, but that they can use that then in their other courses and throughout their career. If we really emphasize it early in that first semester or first year in those gateway courses. So that sounds like a great idea. Okay. Some other ideas, and again, it depends on what, some things fit better in certain types of disciplines or classes than others, but some of these you can apply to any type of class, right? But thinking in terms of, and this goes with what you were saying, but assignments and exams that emphasizing a growth mindset are those where students can improve their skills and show progress and improvement over time. So where it's not just a one and done, so we're looking at, you want to have that formative feedback before you get this high stakes, assignments. So things like projects and papers that include drafts with feedback and opportunities for revision. Again, this doesn't have to just be in a writing class. This can be in any type of class where you might do some type of project or paper or essays. Also having those low stakes assignments early in the semester that are a little bit easier, where students can build confidence to get into the subject area without being quite as intensive. You're sort of scaffolding some of those and giving some lower stakes stuff so they can see, okay, I can do some of this, and then build kind of working up to the harder assignments, even doing some of those sometimes in pieces instead of just having one due date all at once for a major thing, breaking it up so the students are doing parts and then putting them together. If you have tests in your course, like high stakes testing, consider having test retake opportunities. Doesn't necessarily have to be for all the tests, but maybe giving students at least 1 or 2 chances to retake a test if they make mistakes or fail. And I have some folks, even for essay revisions, with my students, for example, after I give what I call a tentative grade on the final essay, I let them still revise and resubmit those essays, but in order to do that, they have to write, some reflective paragraphs about how they did, why they got the grade they did, what they did well, what they need to improve so that they can reflect on that, encourage that metacognition and that thinking about different strategies. That also encourages them to read my feedback. I say, read my feedback carefully and then write a reflective paragraph explaining where the essay was weak and what you can do to improve it. So thinking about that, if you're gonna let them redo, revise, or retake tests, to building in some reflective assignments. Some courses also like to use portfolios of student work, usually with some reflective component, where maybe you, whether you have a big part of the grade this way, or whether it's one grade out of other grades, to give students a chance to sort of submit their best work and reflect on why it was their best. The more you can get students to think carefully about what is strong, what is weak about the work, that's gonna, help them be more aware and conscious of learning. So these are all possibilities, and there's lots more out there too. This is just a little sample here. So the way you usually would end this, and you can pause the recording here, if you're watching this and think about this, is to spend a few minutes to write down some thoughts and reflections about the assignments in your course. Now, some of you might have already talked about some of those, but think about your assignments. What assignments do you have that already incorporate growth mindset or metacognitive reflective principles? And then think about ways that you could emphasize growth mindset more, or if you want to think of a whole new assignment that would include some of these components. If we have more people, of course, we spend a few minutes getting with a partner or small group to share some of these ideas, and then we would share it with the larger group. I'm going to pause the recording here so that folks can think about this. So I'll share first, as far as thoughts and reflections about my own assignments that incorporate growth mindset and ways I could emphasize it even more. And I guess just, going back to, teaching first year composition. When I started teaching this years ago, I did have students do at least one draft, then some feedback, then a final. But after that, the final grade was the final grade. And it wasn't until years later, and partly learning more about growth mindset, that I started adding in further opportunities for revision. And at first, I just told students, you can pick one of your major essays to revise and resubmit. But in recent years, I've kind of gone back to I let students revise and resubmit any of the major assignments. But in order to do that, again, I have them write like a short essay, like a couple paragraphs of reflection on the assignment, looking at my feedback, summarizing my feedback, and then focusing in on what are those areas that the student is going to focus on and how they're going to improve the assignment for a better grade. And that's the only criteria. Once they write that reflection, they just have to meet with me briefly. So that idea of that encouraging the feedback and encouraging students with the idea of meeting with your professors, because a lot of students don't even understand, especially first generation students, they don't really get the idea of office hours. So giving another way to really emphasize and encourage the importance of talking with your instructor. So I make them meet with me and then write a reflective, short reflection about how they're going to improve the assignment. I was worried about doing that at first. I thought, oh my gosh, if all my students are revising all the essays, that's just going to be so much extra grading. I don't think I can handle that. I was surprised that it's not that common that students will, because I think some students see it as, if they're the type of student that's trying to avoid doing the hard work. So the students who take me up on it, and I do try to encourage some students that unfortunately don't choose not to do it, but I find there's fewer students that doing it than could be doing it, which on the one hand is sad, and I want to encourage them to do it more, but it's also not as much extra grading as I was originally fearful of. So I think some students really appreciate those opportunities to improve. Another thing, of course, before we get at, students in my class don't get to that first major essay assignment till a few weeks into the semester. So we have low stakes discussion assignments before that. So there are discussion boards where students can kind of reflect on the course material, reflect on their learning, ask questions, get feedback from other students and from me, and kind of feedback on their plans and brainstorming for their essay assignment before they actually get to the essay assignment. And I do grade those, but I don't grade them, there's not worth as many points, so they're kind of low stakes. But it's a chance to kind of spot any students who are confused before we get to that first assignment as well. So let's see, any other thoughts? I think I did decide I want to emphasize, I want to have, kind of like what you were saying, have more explicitly growth mindset activities at least once during the first week, whether it's going to be part of a discussion board homework assignment reading or just an in-class activity, whether I'm not sure yet if I'm going to have them read something or show a video and respond, but I really like that idea, emphasizing that right at the beginning of the semester, especially for those first year students. Any other thoughts or questions about that or ideas for assignments? You're welcome to unmute or share in the Zoom chat. Okay. Well, that's about it. We're out of time. You're also welcome to stay if you want to chat more at the end. I want to show you again, there's a QR code from my resources. You can have these slides, and it'll take you to these slides. There's also, I have links in the slides to additional resources, but there's also in that QR code, there's folders that have the workshop slides and also other resources such as research. There's kind of like a bibliography of research about growth mindset too, and I'll be adding to it over this year as part of my fellowship for high impact practices. So if you have that, you can go back to it in the future. You can also, and that is of course here, these, if you get this QR code, you can also always reach out to me with any questions about growth mindset. I also focus on tilt. So if you have to tilt 2 assignments or 1 assignment, whichever subject area you're in, you have questions about that, you can also reach out to me. I even meet with instructors one-on-one to help them create material, plan material, and so on. And let me go ahead. There's also a brief survey. This QR code is for a brief survey. I can put these links into the Zoom chat for folks too, but this is just a really short survey for any CETL flows. And I'll be doing some more of this. This is part of a series. So I'll have multiple growth mindset focused workshops as well as multiple workshops on transparency in learning and teaching or tilting your assignments. So you can look out you can always go to the CETL page in the Reynolds website or look out I think they have a weekly newsletter to remind folks about what faculty learning opportunities are coming out. We have stuff every week from CETL about various aspects of teaching. You're also welcome to reach out to CETL with questions if you have any questions. And if you didn't get a chance to sign in, let's see, I can go ahead and put that in the chat as well. But thank you so much, and I hope to see you at a future CETL workshop.